Despite the focus on technology, cybersecurity is all about people. In the cybersecurity industry, we love to tell stories. Stories help us convey important information, they help us teach lessons, but ultimately, it's about helping other people make better decisions based on our experiences. And that's why we're here today. To have OneSource Communications tell us just a few of the hundreds of cybersecurity stories that they have to tell from the mouths of the security experts in that company. Our guest today will also tell us how their exclusive relationship with FireEye, including expertise on demand, has helped them and their customers more effectively find and fight evil. My name is James Graham. I'm with Marketing in FireEye, and I'm your moderator today. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our storytellers today. First, as the Chief Information Security Officer for OneSource, he's responsible for the entirety of OneSource's security operations and strategy. Please welcome Steve Cobb. Also joining us as the Senior Sales Leader for OneSource, he has the Herculean job of figuring out and solving all of his customers' cybersecurity problems. Please welcome Eric Gressel.
So James, thanks for the Shakespearean-esque intro. That was too nice. I feel we'd be remiss not to maybe address a couple of the elephants in the room. So we've got the envious late afternoon, last day of the conference session. So we got that. And then, number two, I think we have three of the most uncomfortable chairs in the entire Metro DC area for our fireside chat. So other than that, I think we're having a great time. So thanks for the intro.
No problem. We better get started then so we can get done.
Let's
Outstanding. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, both for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
It's wonderful to have you guys here, both at the CDS show and to sit with us and talk a little bit about OneSource and FireEye's relationship. So let's start with you, Eric. Give us a little bit of background on OneSource.
Yeah, I mean, to give the background on OneSource, you got to start with our mission, right? Our marketing folks will probably give me a hard time because I won't say the exact mission statement, but really it comes down to we want to take care of our clients. It's the bottom line. We've been doing that for 23 years. And to give everybody a little context of the client base we work with is what we call small enterprise mid-market. To use a common denominator, think somewhere in the 100 million in revenue up to 5 to 7 billion. So really that sub-Fortune 500 market. So starting 23 years ago, obviously cybersecurity was not top of mind. That's not where we got our start. So we got our start really managing a process, what we call outside the building, called communication lifecycle management. So it's really just the process of working in between service providers, whether it be telecom or connectivity providers, getting that to the business, and really helping them navigate the arduous process of pricing, billing, poor technology, whatever it may be, and making those decisions. So that was really the first 15, 16 years of our business. We were lucky enough to build up a client base of 700, 800 companies, ranging, and really our kind of core competency is folks that have large footprints. So think 20, 30,000 plus locations nationwide. So from there, we did a decent job, right? Call it Southern Hospitality, being based in North Carolina or whatever it may be, and service being as the DNA of our company. We built up a 99% retention rate. Our average client would have been with us for 12 years then. And like many clients in that space, their needs had changed, their growth had changed, and they asked us to start coming inside the building. So this is rewind maybe 7, 8 years ago. Many of you probably deal with this. There's IT services companies, MSPs out there. They're all a bit of a dime a dozen. They all try and be one-to-many, and none of them are really consultative. And so our clients started to ask us, can you help us with the computing aspects inside our business? So we transitioned to actually helping them, starting at the firewall, moving all the way in the endpoint, and all the computing needs in between. Then rewind maybe 5, 6 years ago is really where we entered into the cybersecurity space. Our client base, as everybody knows, that threat landscape came straight down in a furious rate. The same attacks that are happening to the Fortune 50 and above are coming down into a $200 million business, a $500 million business. So we, being that our mission is to take care of those clients, felt it was our duty to defend them. So we introduced our managed security services operation, and have been doing that ever since. And Steve will probably tell us a little bit about how that started at FireEye.
Yeah. So before we move on to Steve, tell me a little bit about the priorities and principles
Sure.
that sort of OneSource goes by.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the mission, we want to take care of our clients. I think that's one of the things that really attracted us to FireEye initially was I think both companies are symbiotic in the sense that they're very mission-led. I think both of us take a business-second practice, and that's very important to us. I think, when it comes to FireEye, Mandiant, the intelligence and products are world-class, don't get me wrong, they're bar none, but really at the core of it is the extreme laser focus on the mission first. Let's protect everyone. We want to take care of everyone. FireEye wants to protect everyone. It became a very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly what I've experienced in FireEye so far. So yeah, it definitely makes a difference, right? And there's not that many of us out there. So Steve, we talk about the partnership. We talk about 4 or 5 years ago. Give us a little bit of background on how that started.
So it really started out of that mission that Eric mentioned, wanting to protect and provide value to our clients. So we, as a traditional MSP, would maintain traditional AV on endpoints, things like that for clients, but it really wasn't enough. And so as we saw those threats come downstream, like Eric mentioned, we needed better technology, we needed better intelligence, and we wanted to protect our clients with an intelligence-led product and service. I had previous experience before I came to OneSource with FireEye, so I knew early on about what their capabilities were and the mindset. But what I didn't know was that value until we started the relationship and understood that it was the same symbiotic thought process and mission statement that we want to protect clients and enable them to be the best they can be. So we started using the FireEye products as a mainstay, a default in our product set to start protecting clients. And as part of that, too, just adopted the entire platform model that FireEye puts out, which I think provides a higher level of fidelity and capabilities to clients. And then for us to manage and secure them gives us more confidence that we are truly securing them and we can meet their needs from a protection and defense standpoint.
Yeah, and we hear fidelity is one of the more important aspects of our business that our customers find value in as well.
Sure, absolutely.
So with all that in mind and with that background firmly in place, tell us a little bit, Eric, about what the relationship looks like today.
Yeah, I think from a FireEye partnership perspective, with it being 5 years and running, I don't think we can put it on one slide. There's a lot of different aspects that we're working with FireEye on, but let's keep it on topic for today, really how we're jointly defending and serving our clients. So based on our data, again, serving that kind of sub-Fortune 500 market, what we've Steve's team does an incredible job. We've looked at the data, and what we've come to find is roughly 95 to 97% of all alerts are what we would call routine alerts, right? That's something that Steve's team's incredible, right? They've got former NSA, DoD guys, guys that are very high talent, but there is a certain percentage, 3 to 5%, that are very complex, right? And so what we've been able to do in looking at that data with the FireEye team over the last 3 to 5 years is build out a very elegant process that gives companies that are outside of that realm of Fortune 500 and above the ability to have access to the talent and intelligence that the FireEye and Mandiant teams bring through the expertise on demand piece. So we built out a beautiful process with Steve's team. So any of those let's focus on that 3 to 5%, any of those complex alerts come in, we actually have a direct line through the EOD platform into the FireEye and Mandiant teams to parachute them in, whether that's working in tandem with our SOC analysts or if that's having them parachute and provide air support for certain things. And what we've been able to do based on that data is set up a system in the sense that for a CFO or a CIO, we don't have to pick up the phone and say, hey, we've got an alert here. We think it's a little complex. We'd like to get some support. It's going to be X investment to do that. Is that something you want to do, right? We know the data. We can spread that out through the EOD platform across all our clients, and just seamlessly, we're picking up the phone and just doing that versus that having to be another friction point for a CFO or CIO. So it really gives a beautiful process and gives them that peace of mind. So as they're sleeping at night, they're not worried about having to make a tough investment decision the next day.
For sure, yeah, and I'm a little bit biased as far as expertise on demand is concerned, but Steve, I would love to hear about how your team uses EOD and how that has changed the way that you address problems.
Well, I would say it's obviously a value to us as a security team. We use it for our own applications internally to OneSource as a whole as well. But we can take that then and provide that as value to our clients that's built into the relationship or the agreement they may sign with us because of our relationship with FireEye. So things like intelligence, quarterly briefings, information about analytics, threats that FireEye sees, we can provide that directly to clients who would not have access of that prior. And some of that information is maybe not applicable to them, but I think it provides confidence and context to them of the capabilities of FireEye and OneSource because we're partnering and delivering that information. We always try to tailor that information so it makes sense for the client and it's relevant to them and their environment. But I think as well, when you show them pictures of what FireEye is doing against nation states and where they're determining and doing attribution for APT 41, those kind of things really speak to the muscle that FireEye can bring, and then overall we can pass that through to our clients. So the expertise on demand really brings that to bear for us without having the end client, as Eric mentioned, making some huge investment decision right up front, or even worse, during the moment of crisis, when so many times we see clients that are abused in that state.
If you think about our clients, to piggyback on Steve's point there, most of the CISOs and CIOs we deal with in our market probably worked for larger companies previously, right? So they've had some experience and know FireEye, they know the management teams, they know but they had no idea that they could have access to that. So they're kind of almost flabbergasted when they see a process in place where, hey, I can actually have access to that without having to pay for it 100% of the time. That puts me in the best security posture possible.
For sure, I love that analogy of hired muscle. I'm going to steal that. I hope you don't mind.
He's speaking of himself.
Royalties will be in effect.
There we go. And now it's on
every time
tape,
you
right?
say
Yeah,
it's
no
$5.
problem at all. No problem at all.
I love it.
So again, with all of that in mind, and really, as all of that is fantastic backdrop.
Sure.
Let's get down to why we're really here. Let's tell some stories.
Cool.
So,
Let's do it.
one of the things that I'd like to do is, Steve, if you'd like to give us a story that you tell your CISO buddies around the pool table, and
Well, sure.
about the customer journey, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, all these make. I have a little fire going on.
It's kind of warm.
It's always interesting to share scenarios and things we've seen in real world. So let's take an example. So a Saturday, CIO for a large multi-location manufacturing company calls into our security support team, and he's panicked. His production floor's down. He can't get anything done. And through discussion with our team, he sends us a screenshot, and it's a picture of ransomware. Right, and his questions are, do we pay the ransom? And his other questions are, can you help us get out of this spot? And as we dig deeper into the scenario, we discover that 70% of this company's assets have been infected with ransomware.
That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. So, I mean, what do you do in a case like that?
So once again, it's our mission to try to help people and help clients. And so we come in, we went into that situation with making sure that to try to help provide recovery and incident response. We go in those situations, we immediately deploy FireEye tool sets there, so endpoint, email, and network security for the client. And in that situation, as soon as we put those things in place, the network security starts catching 200 plus command control connections and attempts on it. We see exploits happening across endpoints out in the landscape. So we know at that point we're going to try to contain and make sure this doesn't happen reinfection. So we put those things in place with FireEye to make sure we contain that. And then we start the forensic process with the client and the recovery process. And so forensically, what we found for them was they had been infected with an Emotet malware for several months. It then downloaded TrickBot, which infected the environment, which then ultimately downloaded ransomware spread throughout the environment. Interesting enough, what we discovered, though, is when we got in and started looking at logs and data, the threat actors had logged into the network for the client, hands on keyboard, pivoted to their backup systems, deleted all their backups. So as you can imagine, it was a critical state for this client. So we worked with the client, as I said, even helped them through the recovery process. We had them back up and production operational in 72 hours.
So wait a minute. From 70% lockdown to good to go in 72 hours.
Yeah.
think Steve's been a little humble. He should give his team more credit. This came in on Saturday. By Sunday afternoon, this particular client has 70+ location, hundreds of employees that they would not have been able to open Monday morning, and his team had them open, ready to go, and back and recovered, which is pretty incredible. We couldn't have done that without the FireEye technology, and that's taking stuff from our offices, getting it there, and rocking and rolling.
Right.
That's just an amazing story. I mean, they must have been absolutely thrilled. What's the aftermath of all that?
Yeah, so obviously they were extremely happy. They were most definitely glad to be back up and operational. But even more so, they were incredibly grateful for what we were able to provide, the FireEye technology. And as we talked through them for a managed security service agreement, they were really excited about the opportunities and the value that we could bring from the FireEye expertise on demand standpoint. So things like a $0 retainer with Mandiant as part of it, the quarterly threat briefings I mentioned, access to intelligence that they had never seen before, specific to the manufacturing vertical. So they understand that other businesses that are targeted, we can provide intelligence and protection around those based on our interaction with FireEye and leveraging that through expertise on demand to give them full visibility.
And I imagine they're still a customer.
They are.
Outstanding.
Very much
Very
so.
good.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, as if that's not good enough, you got something that can beat it?
Well, yeah, I mean, so there's another story. We've got a large, so imagine this scenario, a large multi-location automotive dealership. They do about $1 billion in revenue a year, so extremely large. And they get hit with a virus. They don't know what's going on, but you can imagine computers are shutting down, blue screens, randomly things are up and down. People can't buy cars. The loan officers can't make loans. The service department can't service cars. The parts department can't order parts. So extremely stressful time for the CIO. And this is a small shop. They've got three headcount dedicated to IT, which means by default they're also security.
Right.
And they don't have the expertise or skill set to understand. So they're running around cleaning machines, re-imaging machines, which just get reinfected right back within the next few hours. Right. Constant stream. So they go through a 3 or 4 day period where they get no sleep. The CIO finally goes home and he's worried about his job. He has this discussion with his wife. Interestingly enough, his wife works at a large financial institution who uses FireEye. And she says, you should call FireEye. And so that's what he did. He reached out to FireEye to get some help, and FireEye then reached to one source and said, can you lend us a hand in this for this scenario?
That's amazing. Did you give her a referral bonus? No? Yeah. So again, what happens when they call you in?
So we had our incident response team on site within 24 hours. So they were there. Once again, we go through the process of incident response, remediation, and so we deploy network, endpoint, email protection using the FireEye tools. This is a large environment, so 2,000 plus endpoints, a multi-domain, very complex deployment to get them to that point. But we deploy the entire tool set. Once again, we discover that this is a trick bot infection, but we were able to respond to it fast enough where ransomware wasn't deployed and downloaded. So we contained the environment originally and then helped to go through the remediation process with the client. And in this case, as we went through and did forensics, we expressly interacted with Expertise on Demand to verify what we'd seen, to help understand. TrickBot uses some encrypted config files, so we work with them as well, and our team used some expertise to decrypt those, take all those IOCs, put them in place so reinfection couldn't occur while we secured the network. And then we got them to a real good spot as well so we could make sure we could defend it long-term going forward.
Right, and I would imagine that has to do with some additional engagements about, looking at their assessments of their network,
right,
understanding who's out there to get them and why, right, and that sort of thing, and protecting them.
Yeah, and that turned in, they signed a managed security agreement with us within 96 hours. So you can think, we were there in 24 hours, they were so happy in 96 hours, they signed for a long-term agreement. And a lot of that, once again, speaks to the fact that we care about people and our clients, and really having that relationship with FireEye and presenting that to the client helps the client get confidence and understand that in the long term, they're in a much better spot than they were before. And,
right,
and as well, maybe headcount doesn't have to be increased and they have to worry about the stress and the losing jobs when we can assist with that and offload that from our clients. And now they can do what they do best, which is keep the business running to sell cars, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, again, 96 hours to go from really bad to really good again. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know any other industry that can claim that kind of turnaround. So not even the car dealerships themselves can do that. So appreciate that, Steve. Those are some amazing security stories specific to, bad situations that you're able to help these folks out of. want to pivot a little bit, and maybe Eric, you can help me with this. Looking for an example of, where reactive to proactive was the goal and ultimately the accomplishment there.
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, I don't get to claim all the hero stories that Steve has. His team does an incredible job, but luckily not everybody's in a state of crisis when they're evaluating their security posture. So, typically what we find out in the space, James, would be just a lot of sense of false security, just due to lack of knowledge. Like Steve talked about, billion-dollar company, 3 IT staff, that is default security. How do they keep up with this fast-changing, really overwhelming space that we're in with millions of technologies coming out all the time? How do they actually do that? And when you actually peel back the onion as to what they've actually put in place or tried to put in place, it's typically very disjointed. So let's use a maybe semi-regional wealth management firm, maybe a couple $1 billion under management. No big household name, but decent sized assets and so forth. So typically what happens in these types of firms that we see, whether it's financial or any other industry, but that kind of size of company is, the C-suites come down and said we need to increase security because they saw some article or they talked to their buddy or whatever it may be, and so they reached out to their current MSP and they slapped in a Navy tool or they slapped in an endpoint tool or a network tool, and there's no really rhyme or reason as to what they've put in or why they put it in. Realistically, if we're being honest, it's probably they called up their MSP and whatever the highest margin, best spiffed item what that month was, and they recommended that. I mean, that's unfortunately the reality of what most of those folks are coming in. They're putting their the risk of the business there. So in this particular example, we got to know these folks. We peeled the onion back a little bit. And one of the huge value propositions we have being exclusive to FireEye is the holistic nature of the solution, right? This isn't a choppy solution. It ties everything together. And we feel very strongly about putting the whole stack in, being it intelligence-led, product-led, and then the people as well. Yeah. We were able to, again, have a discussion with them. And I think really what it came down to once we got into the nuts and bolts of their current situation was they had a current MSSP that was really just acting as an alert cannon. They didn't have a really good idea of how secure they were. And we were able to kind of tell this FireEye story. And similar to a lot of folks, they just had no idea that they could actually get access to this. They were kind of flabbergasted that, oh wow, I've seen them in news, or I've worked with them in previous worlds at much bigger companies. I didn't know I could get access to that. Right. Like, wow.
Yeah, everybody assumes this really high-level engagement, right? We are the Cadillac of security
100%.
Solutions, right? So, but I would imagine something like expertise on demand helps to kind of cut that out,
Sure.
gain a little bit more confidence, and give people the confidence of knowing that they can access the same types of services just at a much more flexible way.
Yeah, and not having to pay for that 100% of the time. The reality is a firm like that may or may not be able to afford mandate-level services 100% of the time, and so bridging that gap, but still being able to go to their board and their C-suite and say, hey guys, we're good. We're good, right? And we've got somebody that's looking at it holistically, has taken a step back, and they got us covered. And partnering with FireEye to do that is immeasurable.
That's excellent.
And I think as well, in situations like that, Eric can speak to this more so. He's a sales guy, so he can elaborate on this. But in a lot of those engagements with clients, when we can offer multi-services, so security being a service, and for a lot of customers that are in that small business space, they don't have a security budget, right? They've either been breached or new directives have come down and regulations that they've got to meet. There's no security budget. They've never had one before, right? And so as we look at what other services we can provide, that communication lifecycle management a lot of times can yield
20 to 40%.
20 to 40% savings for the client.
Wow.
We can self-fund their security costs by going by their security program by going in and looking at the communication lifecycle management.
So give you a quick example, real life one, $500 million software company in a constant state of IR, their security budget consisted of the CISO's salary and all the money they're spending in IR on a monthly basis. They needed about $250,000 to get a fully managed solution in. We were able to go in there through communication lifecycle management and a budget of about $1.5 million in connectivity. We found $300K a year in savings. So think about it as a CIO. He walked into the board and said, I've got a fully managed solution with the best technology in the world, FireEye. I've got a parachute of Mandiant and the MDR team on top of that. Oh, and our budget impact, I saved us $50,000. I mean, who else can do that? That's an amazing opportunity, and that guy gets to walk in and be the hero. Hey, we're out of a state of IR because now we got the best technology in the world.
Yeah. I would argue that I'd say you guys are the heroes in that, along with FireEye. Yeah, no, I definitely give you credit for that.
Finally, somebody did.
Hey, right? And we're on tape as well, like I said. So, no, that's an even better story, right? That's one where you don't even have to worry about people walking into their office and worrying about their jobs, right? This is where you can get them to good before they even know that they might be bad.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's not always the case, obviously, but in more times than not, it is the case. So we can at least find savings to offset that cost potentially. So, but once again, the goal is to protect and defend folks, help them out, whatever it is in our service lines, and if we can, multiply that or magnify it by adding those together, then it's a win-win for the client. And that's what we're trying to do, is make sure we help clients, protect them, and even save them money if we can.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, gosh, who wouldn't go for that, right? That's amazing. So yeah, again, amazing stories. I love the fact that we can get on both sides of that coin and talk about the reactive and the proactive, because I think we're adding real value together there. So I want to go ahead and just pivot away from the stories real quick. I know we're wrapping up. We want to leave some time for Q&A. But what I do want to ask about is, we talked about the past. Let's talk about the future. Steve, what do you see as the future for the relationship between FireEye and OneSource?
I think I see it maturing more and more and more. So as I spoke about the intelligence-led methodology FireEye uses, we're coming alongside and adopting that more and more as we get a tighter and tighter relationship. So I think right now, as we see things, interaction between our teams and FireEye and Mandiant's team, what we want to see and hope that this happens, and it looks like it is happening, is those lines begin to blur and it becomes more seamless for the client. So they have a really easy and seamless process. And they do now, but we hide that from them, if you will, on the back end piece. So more interaction on the back end between FireEye and OneSource beginning tighter. I think as well, just us providing feedback into FireEye. That's one of the great things about the relationship, is FireEye has been really open for an MSSP and any other MSSPs that may be in the audience or watch the video. I think it's a great relationship. They've had an open ear when we give feedback and say, this may work for a Fortune 500 company in enterprise, but for us in MSSP, it doesn't work. Can we massage this or change these or things or do those things? And all the teams across FireEye, especially Expertise on Demand, I'll give a shout out to some of those folks that are here as well today. They've been really open and welcoming to hear those things in order to help us be more successful. And I think ultimately what it means is more success for our clients.
For sure. Eric?
Yeah, I think I would probably just say simplification. When you think about businesses and kind of the market we're speaking to right now, it's just overwhelming. They don't have large security teams that can do all the digging and diving and understand. And what we've got from a partnership perspective is a pretty straightforward, holistic solution that really blankets everything. And continuing to tell that story and enhance that story. And I think maturity is a great way, but that's what the client base is looking for. They don't want to run multiple evaluations, an endpoint evaluation, network, SIM evaluation. They kind of want that single throat to choke. Yeah. I always say, folks coming to us, they ask us, hey, we want you to do our security. They don't say, I want you to do my email or my endpoint. It's, I want you to do my security, right? And that's a much different story to tell.
Yeah, and I would say that, you guys are both painting a very, very positive picture about the future. And I would say that from the FireEye perspective, everything that I've seen and heard so far about the relationship it just reinforces that, right? Sure. So I know from our perspective, we certainly consider it more than just a sort of a standard sales agreement, right?
Sure.
It's one of these examples about what happens when you've got two powerhouses working together with the same philosophy, with the same attitude, the same mission focus. Yep. And in the end, the partnership itself becomes more than just the sum of its parts, right? And I think some of the stories that you told today are really proof points to that.
Yeah.
So, and at that point, I think that we've concluded our story section, but we did want to open it up to anyone in the audience who had questions for Steve or Eric, or even for me. I'll do my best to answer what I can.
Yeah, somebody
right?
asked
So
James something.
I work in marketing,
Ask
so
James
please.
something. I want to hear his answers.
What I'll do is I'll give you the line and point you to somebody else to get the real answer. So, but happy to open it up to anyone. If not a problem. But we definitely wanted to make it available to you folks. And at that, We've also got an offer here from OneSource. They're offering a complimentary external threat assessment. Anyone who's interested there can visit that site right there, fill out the form, and these gentlemen will be in your service. So, again, any questions?
This comes back to the elephant in the room. Late
Right?
afternoon
There we
session,
go. There we
last
go. I
one.
bet you if we had a bar up here, it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
That's
good
what
deal.
we should have done.
Cool.
So thank you all very much.
Awesome.
Eric, thank you
Cheers.
very much.
Yeah, thank
Steve,
you. Yeah,
thank you
thank
very
you.
much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the show.